Thank you, Clarissa. Let's get some more on all of this. Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts is joining us. He's a member of the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. And I want to begin with this new claim from the president. Have you seen any evidence that the Iranians were planning to attack 4 American embassies?
Absolutely not. Just 2 days ago, Wednesday afternoon, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Esper, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the CIA, all briefed 100 senators on this question of imminent threat to the United States as a justification for the assassination of General Soleimani. And we sat there for 75 minutes waiting to get the evidence, waiting to get the information which would prove that there was an imminent threat. What we heard for that 75 minutes was that it was something that could have happened days or weeks from now. They did not give us any specific targets. They all got up after 75 minutes to just walk out of the room. There were still at least a couple of dozen senators who wanted to ask more questions, more follow-on questions, but it all would have been aimed towards getting the answer to the question of what were the targets and when were those targets going to be hit. And we didn't have any information. But then 24 hours later, the president says, well, it was an embassy. And then 48 hours later, the president's saying, well, it was 4 embassies. So it's outrageous, Wolf, that there is just an absolute cavalier indifference that this administration has for the United States Senate, that in closed briefing, secret session, they would not give us this information, but yet for Fox News, the president can do an interview that reveals all of this without having first disclosed it to the Senate. So
well, how do you explain
it's just
that,
outrageous.
Senator?
It's who he is.
Well, how do you explain that, Senator? What's going on here?
Well, I just think that they believe that they can just treat the United States Congress as something that is not relevant to this decision of whether or not we go to war with Iran, whether or not we engage in dangerous activities that can have potentially catastrophic consequences for our national security, not only in the Middle East, but also here in our homeland. And that's how they want to conduct business. And that's why it was so important that the House had a debate yesterday and a vote on whether or not we should have a war with Iran without receiving previous permission from the Congress, and why it's important that we have the same debate on the Senate floor next week, because the president has to be made accountable. What he just did in the last 2 days in denying us the information which we were entitled is just a further indication that unless we ratchet up our level of pressure, we could very easily just slip into a situation where by accident, because of the lack of oversight, Trump and his advisors are able to make decisions that could be potentially dangerous for our national security.
While I have you, Senator, let's quickly talk about the president's impeachment trial in the Senate. The Speaker now says she plans to send the 2 articles of impeachment to the Senate next week. Is that the right call?
Well, again, I think that Nancy Pelosi has handled this masterfully. Because she withheld, we've been able to find out that Bolton would be willing to testify. 2, gain access to emails, which are going to really shed a spotlight in terms of what was happening. It will give us an opportunity, and it has thus far, to put more pressure on Republican senators to come to an arrangement where we have witnesses, Mulvaney, Bolton, others who have firsthand information about what the president knew and when he knew it. Now, there's no guarantee that ultimately Republicans are going to give us those witnesses, because McConnell keeps saying that he has the 51 votes to proceed, and that they'll make the decision later as to whether or not there are witnesses. Later with Mitch McConnell, I'm afraid, is going to mean never. So the time that Nancy Pelosi gave us is very valuable, because public pressure is intensifying on Republican senators to find some way of ensuring that it is a full and fair trial, that there are witnesses, and that the American public get the information from witnesses that were denied on the House side, and that all of that is going to be directly relevant and informing senators' judgment as to whether or not they vote to remove Trump from office. So I think Nancy Pelosi did just the right thing, and at the appropriate time when she sends it over, we'll be ready to proceed.
You and your colleagues in the Senate are going to be very busy over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Senator Markey, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Will.